Welcome back. I've got Rachael McCrary on the line. Rachel, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing really, really well. Really looking forward to this conversation. You do some amazing work. So, for those that aren't aware of you, why don't you share a little about you and the work you do, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good. My name is Rachael McCrary. I'm an entrepreneur. My current company is called Gather Labs. It's a clinical diagnostics laboratory focused on better patient care.
I always ask entrepreneurs, and I know the answer for myself, but I'm sure before you were an entrepreneur, you probably worked for some organizations and then decided, yeah, I want to be my own boss. But what was that like, especially in a world of diagnostics and the same day diagnostics that your team does? What prompted you to take that journey to go down the road and be your own entrepreneur, and especially in a very, very important sector such as diagnostics and healthcare?
Yeah, I actually came out of the womb as an entrepreneur. My mom says I had entrepreneurial endeavors in high school. I just kind of like wake up and I call it like how an artist or a musician, I consider myself an artist, and these things come in my stomach. I get these ideas and they just get like louder and louder and louder until it's just like, okay, and they just come out. So to me, like building companies, is like an artist or a musician or something would build their art. So Gather Labs is actually my fifth company. I did have a corporate career for about 8 years in New York. I was a fashion designer, specifically in lingerie. I was a lingerie designer. So I'm now a lingerie expert that's disrupting the healthcare industry, and we can get into how that happens.
Oh, definitely interested in that. But I love the artist analogy because we're creating things, whether it's creating a business or creating a product or a service or a different way to do things, or to make things better for people. That's creativity. And when you have that spirit to want to do that, where you lose track of time when you're working, that's when yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, and this is something that I love doing. And yeah, there's sacrifices, but you know what? It's the ability to take an idea that is bouncing around in your stomach, and then you finally say, okay, let's use some brain power on this, and you launch something that is really, really instrumental, and you thrive from it. It's this energy boost that you can't get from any other place. I'm getting tingles right now just thinking about it. It's such an interesting thing, especially when you look back and you go, okay, this is where this thought came about, and now I'm looking at it and like, wow, this is like a living, breathing entity that's doing amazing things.
Yeah, that is true. Like, sometimes I always feel like it never goes fast enough. And people say I go 100 miles an hour, but it's like it's never, you always see like the future part, and you always want it to be there, and I said to this like spiritual advisor the other day, is the shaman, and I was just like, I just want to change the healthcare industry and how diagnostics are done. And he goes, you already have. You just need to make it bigger, and it's just like when you look back at the whole thing and how it actually like exists, and you can drive down Robertson Boulevard and see it, but yeah, it's funny, the word work, I always feel like that's not what I do, because there's a connotation of trading time for money and clocking in and clocking out, and that's just never been something that made sense to me. It's just like, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do with my life, and sometimes I get lucky enough to happen to get paid to do it, or somehow it reaps a monetary benefit, but I would do it no matter what. It's just like, it has to happen. Like the train's going, like someone that has like song lyrics or like something that they have to pay. And I definitely consider myself an artist. I actually did go to art school. My degree is in fashion design. So that's how my brain works. And I'm listening to Rick Rubin's book right now about the creative process, and I just apply all of it to building a company, and it's the same thing to me. So sometimes you switch gears, right? And you need to change the scenery, and to like change the channel. I call it like changing the channel. Like, you just, okay, I need to change the scenery, but it's not like working or not working, because it's always running in the background no matter what.
That's really cool. You're using Rick Rubin's book to, kind of be a kind of a foundational about, launching businesses and things like that, because obviously Rick has been extremely successful in his career, and obviously all the talent that he's worked with is a big thing. So before we forget, how did you go from lingerie to diagnostics? That is a connection point. I think a lot of people are trying right now, if they're listening at the moment, they're trying to figure out, okay, how did that happen? So why don't you walk us down that path?
First of all, it was never a decision. Like, I don't ever remember sitting there saying, I'm going to switch what I'm doing. And I was actually raised by a scientist. Her microscope is sitting right there. My grandmother was a big scientist. She was the first woman to get a PhD in a scientific field in the state of North Carolina. So somehow I was around science my whole life. But so I invented a bra called the RxBra. That's a medically effective bra that's also cute and comfortable. That's used for post surgery. I was a co-founder of that company with my two co-founders, and that sort of introduced me to some people in medical. And then I have a friend from living in Hong Kong developing other lingerie products. Like most bra designers lived in Hong Kong or China at some point. So at the beginning of the pandemic, someone that I met when I was building my company called Jewel Toned, it's a shapewear company. He asked me, to help him at the beginning of the pandemic. And then, some of the doctors that I was working with for the bra, and then some friends that worked in healthcare were just like, hey, could you help with some things? And my friend that has a biotech company that I met while I was making bras, he asked me to help him. And I helped him with his like EUA applications for his SARS-CoV-2 lateral flow immunoassays. And I just kind of learned everything about it. And I have a photographic memory, and we were on lockdown. And, I just took a knack to it. And there were a lot of important people that, were like, wow, like, how do you know how to do this? And I was like, I don't know. It's just like in there. And, I ended up training a lot of people, a lot of like surgeons and doctors on the different, types of tests, and like when you would use a serological test, and what are the different ranges mean for IgM and IgG, and spike proteins and active viral load and an antigen versus like an active viral load, and what you're looking for and why, and they're not all equal, and not that one is good or bad, but you use them for different reasons. So I just became an educator for SARS-CoV-2. Not really so much for work, just like happened, and I was helping my friend, and I was using labs. I was communicating with labs for him because he couldn't fly here. And I just remember looking at the labs, like when we would go there to use them as reference sites for clinical trials. And I just was like, wow, like this is just like a dinosaur. Like this hasn't changed. And then as I learned more about how, medical and science are totally different, and laboratory licensing and medical licensing, and, the different staffing that you would do for that are totally different teams that have nothing to do with each other, which I didn't really know before that. And, I started, getting offered like every job in the world in diagnostics. And I was like, I'm a terrible employee. Like, you don't want that. And I was just like, you know what, like, I was just standing in a lab, and this person at the front desk was just like kind of dead inside and had lost, some data. And I was just like, this is crazy. This is supposed to be like science. And it's just like, just needs a lot of help. So I was just like, I'm just going to disrupt that. So it just kind of happened. And then I learned about, CLIA and clinical laboratory amendments and all of the regulations, and how to build a lab, and just kind of built it one brick at a time. I obviously employed doctors and scientists, and I went back to school at UCLA and became an EMT. swabbed a lot of people for COVID. And, but the intention was always to build like a mini Quest or LabCorp, if you will, that does everything, just in a smoother process, and just, to have the same capabilities, but to change the tech, the hospitality, and the process around it. I've had some health problems, and waiting for diagnostics for a long time can just be like nail biting. And, if that can be a smoother process, and like, why is that? Why is there no, or very little like sort of care and love and kindness in that? Why is it so transactional? How can we make that a little bit of a softer landing? If you can imagine, someone that is, like on dialysis, or has, thyroid, or someone that's elderly, or just has a chronic condition that has to get diagnostics all the time, how that can just really, change their life and their whole process with medical. So here we are. So Gather Labs was born to change the process and the hospitality and the care and the tech around receiving traditional diagnostics.
As a former healthcare executive, I give you a standing ovation for wanting to, get rid of the dinosaurs that are riddled throughout the system. And from a diagnostic standpoint, the same day diagnostics is such a game changer for so many things, from, because normally it's like, oh, it would take a week to get the results back, that, okay, that person, whatever, they're being tested on, is going to be stressing about it for a week. And we know what stress does to our bodies. It just can amplify problems instead of just, okay. And also from a treatment standpoint, the clinicians will go, okay, the results are back. This is this. Okay, this is the course that we're going to take. But you said something a few minutes ago about how you had discovered that, the medical and the labs kind of things were these separate entities instead of this ecosystem that works together on things. And the fact that you recognize that and like, no, it shouldn't be this way. There should be more of a harmonious movement, not only for patient experience, but just, the example you gave of, the person in the lab that just looked dead. It's like, this is so critically important work to be able to get the tests, diagnose whatever the situation is, come up with a resolution or solution, or identify what's going on so that patient can get whatever type of treatment we currently have available. Then, of course, on top of it, capturing all of this data and information to move us towards better treatments for whatever it happens to be, whether it's COVID, cancer, you name it, whatever the situation is. Without, these diagnostics being done in a shorter time frame, it prolongs things. And you saw an issue, and you, because you're the entrepreneur that you are, said, well, let's fix this. I sat on so many governmental committees on healthcare and trying to implement, changes. I know that's a very dirty word in healthcare sometimes, is change, but implement some things to make things better for everybody, not just the patients, but the clinicians, the whole system, to streamline things. It's like, why are we doing that? Because we've always done that. Okay, well, it's like we used to ride horses and had buggies to get us to places. Now we have vehicles, and eventually self-driving and flying and all the other inventions that's going to be coming. But at the end of the day, it's like, just because that's how we're doing it, does that make sense now? And in many cases, it doesn't. So it's breaking through those barriers and establishing those healthcare partnerships that, before we're like, well, we just send it over and then they send it back eventually, and then we go from there. But they don't even know who's there. And I think the work that you're doing, especially when people that, quite frankly, normally aren't trusting. And again, I worked with doctors for a long time. A lot of times they're not that trusting on things, but the fact that you were able to break down those barriers and you basically had a pick of all kinds of different opportunities speaks volumes to what you launched and what you discovered. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And it's, one of those things where, and I know we're getting close to, ending time, but there's so many other questions I want to ask you. But one of the things, that came to me too, when, I was taking some notes and things like that is, obviously you want to expand this and you want this, maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this would be amazing for this to be a global way of doing things and retire the way things were done before. So, where is that? Because, when you mentioned earlier too about, having the conversation with your shaman and they told you you already have, well, you're in that, yeah, but it's got to grow bigger. So, where are things as far as growing bigger for you right now?
Yeah. So obviously our dream would there to be a gather labs in, every city where everyone knew they could go to the counter like an Apple store and, order a diagnostic through the help of physicians or clinicians there. And our dream is to change the psychology around it. We've acquiesced to, lab tests taking a long time and lab tests being, when you're sick. Diagnostics are really cool, and getting information from your own body is really empowering. And it shouldn't just be for just when you're sick. Look how obsessed everyone is about their steps, in their phone and like getting like anything from wearables. What if they could have all of the information that me and my team can get all the time of like, instead of shooting in the dark and taking medical advice from Instagram and ordering apple cider vinegar and turmeric, like maybe you don't need that. Like maybe there's something else that would make you feel a little bit better. It's not necessarily some big diagnosis, but if you're low in like vitamin K or magnesium or have some level that's downtrending, no one's going to tell you about it unless it's in the red. And I experienced that myself as I had some levels that were downtrending over a few quarters. And I like laid them all out on the table and looked at it and was like, why is no one looking at this? They're just going to wait until it's a huge problem. There's something you can do about it. There's a supplement you can take or, something you can do in your wellness routine to just like feel better. Like why, I just want to change it so it's not just used as this thing of once a year or either, for sick people that it's like, health, we're obsessed with health optimization. And, the tiny little bit of people in Beverly Hills that can come to Gather Labs are used to that, the gym rats and health nuts and things like that, like shouldn't be shooting in the dark for your wellness and supplements. Like, why don't you just look and see what it is that your body needs, and don't take things unnecessarily. So that's the dream. And that's the goal, is to build out as many as we can. And then also have it fast and affordable enough to where, you can just use it as part of your wellness.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that, especially with the wearables and, all the other things, it you feel better. Yeah, and I think when you feel better, then stressful situations in life, you're able to navigate either around them or through them a whole lot easier. And if you're not feeling well, it's typically your body's telling you something's off. And then you go to the doctor, you get the blood work done, and they say, okay, you're low on this and this. But that didn't happen overnight. And the fact that you could go and say, okay, I want to get a full body of diagnostics on what's going on right now. So that way you can see, all right, yeah, it says, Dr. Instagram said, you got to take this and, shotgun apple cider vinegar doesn't taste good, people. It's like, remember when dyeing your eggs as kids or something? Imagine drinking that stuff. That's pretty much what it tastes like. And I don't recommend you drinking that, but or the egg dye anyway. But again, it's like, well, I'm going to do this, I do this, and all of a sudden you might be adding something to your body that your body doesn't need, and all of a sudden you're over on something, which of course has a connection to other things. So it's like, it's better for you to get an understanding of what does your body need, and then supplement it or add it to your food intake, whatever makes sense for you based on what those needs are. You'll start feeling better. You start feeling better, you start sleeping better, your cognitive ability improves. The opportunities that you're looking for in life become clearer because you feel better. And feeling good is such an amazing thing. And unfortunately, and I see it all the time when I was working in healthcare clinics and all that, there's so many people that aren't feeling good, and a lot of it is within their control to be able to address that. And but they don't take ownership in their health, and it's like, we only get one of these things, so do your best to take the best care possible. And obviously with the work you're doing with Gather Labs, you're making that possible for people.
Thank you.
So anything else before we wrap up? Because I know we covered a lot of ground, and it's I'm absolutely thrilled to have had this conversation with you, because again, it's speaking to what I in my years of being an executive in healthcare, I want people to live healthier. Nothing would make me happy. It's like, what? We're going to shift this clinic from being a doctor's office to more of a proactive wellness type of environment, where people are coming in to check and see what they need to tweak and things like that, instead of dealing with their 5 chronic diseases that they're dealing with and all of that. So anything else you'd like to highlight before we wrap up?
Yeah, just that. And there's such a big focus on mental health and spirituality and things like that. And a lot of people with physical elements and stress see all of that as a luxury. It's hard to focus on your mental health when your brain's just going to like wherever the physical pain is. So all full body optimization comes from mind and body wellness, and making sure that you physically feel good first. Otherwise the rest of it's pretty challenging. And then anybody that has a big crazy dream or something inside of them that you feel like it has to come out, I encourage you to just try and at least take the first step. And you don't know how it's all going to unfold and have all the answers, but just starting is doing, and trying is doing, and then eventually it'll just take on a life of its own and blossom into something that you look at and say like, wow, I created that. And going back to what you said in the beginning about that feeling of looking at that, I always say, the 2 best feelings in the world are being in love and getting a really big like startup win, and just building something that you're just inherently proud of, because you did something that everyone said was impossible and hard, and then it happened.
Yeah, you're definitely an inspiring human being, and I'm so thankful for you and this amazing work, Rachel. So where can people find out more about you, Gather Labs, and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah, gatherlabs.com and Gather Labs on Instagram. And you can find me. I'm Rachael McCrary, and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram myself. And anyone can just reach out to me and ask me anything.
Sounds good. We'll definitely have that in the show notes. So again, Rachel, thank you so much for this conversation. Really love talking with you, and thank you for all this amazing work you're doing.
Thank you so much.